report, and that what you concluded was, in fact, the evidence was not sufficient to bring charges against the president for mishandling documents. I thank you for being here today. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to you such time as you may consume, sir.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. Mr. Hur, why did the White House lawyers go look in the first place? My understanding is they went to the Penn Biden Center. Why'd they go look in the first place? I mean, look for classified, mishandling classified, look for classified documents. Why'd they do it?
What we identified through our investigation was that at a certain date, members of the president's staff went to the Penn Biden Center in order to get a better handle on what kinds of evidence and what kinds of materials were at the Penn Biden Center.
Were they specifically looking for potential documents that were classified, or was it a broader initial look?
My understanding is that it was a broader initial look, and I'm looking at Chapter 14, page 257 of my report about a visit in March 2021 to the Penn Biden Center.
Okay. In March?
In March of 2021.
Was this after the Justice Department began their investigation into President Trump?
I confess I don't have the date of the beginning of the investigation into President Trump at hand, Chairman.
I believe it was the same month. I believe it was after. So I was just curious of that. Now, one other thing I think is important for folks to understand is President Biden had this information everywhere. You said they initially went to the Penn Biden Center. Which location was it at? Do you remember when they initially did their look? Was it at the transition office? Was it at the temporary Penn Biden Center in Chinatown? Or was that at its current location where the Penn Biden Center currently sits here in, final location, I guess, in D.C.? You remember?
I believe the visit that I referenced in March 2021 that's described on page 257 was to the Penn Biden Center's permanent and current location.
Permanent and current. So there were those 3 places classified information was at. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. The initial transition office immediately after the end of the vice presidency, and the Penn Biden Center's temporary office, and the Penn Biden Center's permanent office.
Okay. So those, and then you had the University of Delaware Library, the University of Delaware Biden Center, right? So that's 5 total. And then you had multiple places in his home.
Correct.
The garage, the den, the office upstairs, and the office downstairs.
Correct.
So what is that? That's like 9 different places.
I've lost count, sir, but
yeah, it's everywhere. And it was documents over a 50-year time frame. And then by comparison, because the Democrats want to keep comparing to President Trump's classified document right at his home with Secret Service protection. I don't know that they're anywhere else, were they?
I'm not aware of other locations, President.
Yeah. I think that's an important distinction. I would yield back to the gentleman for South Carolina. Appreciate him yielding.
Thank you, Chairman. Briefly, I know we've got 2 minutes left, but Mr. Hur, how would you define willful?
With respect to the intent of willfulness, what a jury has to conclude is that someone knew that their conduct was illegal when they engaged in that conduct.
Right, it's intentional, right? It's not by accident. It's not accidental or involuntary.
Correct.
Okay, so here's where I disagree with your portion of the report on willful, is that you have a gentleman who served 36 years in the Senate. I've only been here a year, but I understand the importance of handling classified information. He served 8 years as vice president. In 2010, it came to the attention of the vice president's staff that classified briefing books had not been returned. Even if they were returned, some of the content was missing. The same year, the executive secretary raised that nearly 30 of the classified briefing books from the first 6 months of 2010 were missing. In August of that year, then Vice President Biden failed to return top secret, sensitive compartmented information contents of a classified briefing book from a trip that he took to the Hamptons. And to date, you were unable to determine if these documents were ever recovered. Is that correct?
Correct.
So to me, this wasn't. When does willfulness when does willfulness factor in? Is it now in his diminished mental capacity, or is it then when he was serving as senator and vice president?
A jury would be assessing President Biden's mental state and his intent, or whether or not he had willfulness at the time that the conduct was committed.
Correct, and I think everyone can kind of plainly see the transgression or the difference between then candidate Biden or Vice President Biden and what is going on now. And so this is where I go to it, as the chairman talked about it in his opening comments. he had 8 million reasons to hold these documents. In fact, he disclosed some of this information to his ghostwriter. And so I think that there could have been willfulness. And I think, I've got 10 seconds left, but look, since 2016, there have been 3 candidates to run for president. All 3 have had allegations of issues surrounding the retention and holding of classified documents. But Mr. Herr, only one of them has been charged, and that's President Trump. And that's why people think and view this as a 2-tiered system of justice. Thank you, sir.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from, do you have unanimous consent?
I'll wait. Let him go ahead.
Gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Bond.
Thank you.
Mr. Herr, they say the best for last, so I'm looking forward to this opportunity. First of all, what I've observed in this hearing is that one side thinks you're trying to get President Trump elected, and the other side thinks you're trying to get President Biden elected. I served as a prosecutor for 25 years. I know that you're going to take grief from both sides. You must be doing a great job in your report and during your investigation if you have convinced both sides that you are somewhere in the middle. I commend you for your background. I would have loved to have met Chief Justice Rehnquist. What a hero to conservatives and really Americans, and that must have been a great opportunity for you. But when both sides attack you, my admonition is welcome to Congress. How many? I do have a question, and it goes along the lines of what Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Fry were asking you earlier. I'm really confused about willfulness and your view of willfulness. It's clear to me that at the time, Vice President Biden knew he had classified documents. He told his, after he left the vice presidency, he told his biographer, ghostwriter, those classified documents are in the basement. So he had the mental state that he had classified documents. He also knew that his basement was not a SCIF. It is not a secure area. And so at the point, if at that point in time he said, oh my gosh, I've got to call the archivist, I've got to call Secret Service somebody and get these documents taken away, perhaps he has this defense of acting as quickly as he knew about the documents. And I don't see where the willfulness is missing when he had those two. The element's pretty clear. He possessed classified documents. He held them in a non-secure area, and he did so knowingly. He knew he had classified documents in an unsecure area. Where is the willfulness missing?
Well, sir, prosecutor to prosecutor, I certainly agree with you that the evidence in the form of the audio recorded statement where the president said to his ghostwriter, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs, that is evidence that any prosecutor would present as significant evidence in a case if this went to trial. And reasonable jurors might well infer that President Biden formed criminal intent based on that piece of evidence. But what we did in our report was to try to walk through exhaustively. You know well as a prosecutor, you need to assess with a very cold eye the strengths of your case and the weaknesses of your case, and try to anticipate arguments that defense counsel might well present at trial. And what we tried to do in our report was to walk through potential arguments that would be presented by defense lawyers at the president's trial, and to determine how, by our judgment, how jurors would receive and perceive the evidence presented, including but not limited to evidence relating to the president's memory gaps that were in various pieces of evidence that we assessed.
So how do you overcome that recording where he says, I've got classified documents, he's 30 years in the Senate or whatever it is, he obviously knows how he has to treat classified documents, I've got classified documents in the basement. What is the defense to that? That it was a made-up recording, that it wasn't his voice, that everyone was wrong? How do you defend that particular fact, as well as, I did a lot of tax cases, you had to prove a pattern of conduct. And in this case, he had a lot of documents in a lot of places. How do you overcome those things?
Yes, Congressman. So we walked through a number of different evidentiary gaps that reasonable jurors might focus on, as well as a number of different defense arguments that the president's defense lawyers could present at trial. The first is a theory or an argument to the jury that the president, yes, he did say to his ghostwriter, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs, but then soon thereafter forgot about the documents. And therefore, it would be difficult to convince a jury that actually he knew that it was illegal to keep the documents and he continued to do so. A second argument that we considered is that perhaps these documents never actually were in Virginia in his private rental home there. Perhaps the documents were there by virtue of staff or himself having those documents at the Delaware home from the time that he was still vice president all the way through the time of their being discovered. And finally, another theory that we walked through on the report is that there were 2 folders of marked classified documents relating to Afghanistan found in the box in the president's Delaware garage. One of them contained national defense information, and the other, it would be a more difficult task to persuade a jury that it did contain national defense information. So that argument would be premised on perhaps the president was referring to the one folder that didn't contain national defense information, but was not. It would be difficult for the government to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he possessed the one that did contain national defense
Hey
information.
guys, like and subscribe if you haven't already.
There,
Woo!
we do our best to explain that at some length.
Thank you, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentlelady from Texas recognized.
I thank you. And there's been a lot of time being shared, Mr. Chairman. I ask your very brief indulgence.
Wait. You got a unanimous consent or you asking a question?
Your brief indulgence and unanimous consent to ask question.
No. You can do a unanimous consent request, but you don't get to get another round. Someone comes to yield you time, but I don't think they can do that because everyone on the Democrat side has taken their time.
How did you-
And you know that I
How did you
appreciate the
count them down?
gentlelady from Texas, but you
Yeah.
don't get to go 2 rounds.
I'm not trying to go 2 rounds, but
You got
let
a
me.
unanimous consent request. You want the record state so. If not, then we're.
I am
Close the
getting
case.
ready to do the unanimous consent request, hoping that someone would come through the door. I ask unanimous consent.
It can only be a Republican because all the Democrats have spoken.
I ask unanimous consent that we add to the record as stated from page 1 of the executive summary. We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if the Department of
objection.
Justice policy did not foreclose
I think the committee
criminal
knows what's
charges
in the
against the city
report.
president. I
We
ask
got the
unanimous
report.
consent that that sentence be put in. And secondarily, I ask unanimous consent and a
Unanimous
reference.
consent to add something to the record that's already in the record. God bless you. We'll do it.
Thank you. And I add, with the emphasis of Sheila Jackson Lee, it does not have. And I particularly ask that this be added to the record that Mr. Herr stated that Biden couldn't recall when his son Bo died. I add unanimous consent out of an article in Politico and indicate that there was no mercy given to Mr. Biden, no mercy given to him in the decision
Without
of this
objection,
report.
so entered. Mr. Hurd, even though there wasn't a question there, do you want to respond to any of that?
No, Chair.
All right. Mr. Hurd, we want to thank you
Thank
for
you. I
being
yield
here
back.
today. And we wish the best to you and your family. This concludes today's hearing. We thank our witnesses for appearing before the committee today without objection. All members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness or additional materials for the record. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.
All right, guys. So that was Robert Herr. I thought it was Ben Herr all day. Robert Herr testifying. If you don't remember, Herr wrote up a report. It was about Biden, his classified materials, and the fact that Biden couldn't remember A, when he was vice president, or B, when his own son passed away. And Democrats just rained down on this guy for writing a report that they did not like. So, and I think they even suggested, how dare you not send it to us for sanitization prior to publishing, which is just crazy. So anyways, if you haven't already, I appreciate it if you liked. It's the 3 buttons right up there, right there. And then there's a like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to be doing this all day, every day. Not all day, every day. We're going to be doing this when there's interesting trials that come out. And, I appreciate everybody who joined us today. Remember, knowledge is power. Subscribe for more.